On its opening weekend, 1/3 of all moviegoers in America attended the First Wives Club. Most were women, or men brought by women. When men say, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned," it's called sexism. But when women cheer at a movie of scorned women ruining men, it's called Hollywood comedy. This is misandry because only one sex's pain is portrayed, and that one sex is seen as the only victim, when in reality failed marriages hurt both sexes. For each 40-year-old wife turned in for two 20s, there's a 40-year-old husband who feels stuck in a meaningless career, but fears being disposable if he isn't an adequate success, or a husband trying to stay faithful despite a sexless marriage, and feeling guilty when he tries to receive some sexual fulfillment to make contact with someone who will end his cycle of nightly rejection without making him feel guilty. For each first wife who loses income, there is a second wife who gains income. For each first husband who loses his home and his children, there is a second wife who struggles with a man who has a depleted bank account and a broken heart. Or there is a woman who rejects that man because of it. For each single mother who is juggling children, a job, and unpaid child support, there is a single dad who has seen his marriage become alimony payments, his home become his ex-wife's home but his mortgage payments. Their children become child support checks for children who have been turned against him. Both sexes have sex-typical crises that require compassion. When our popular culture gives outlet to those of only one sex and blames the other, we add a crisis to a crisis. The power of women to take the moral high road is perhaps best stated by novelist Anita Brookner in her work Louis Percy. She says, "He came, of course, as a supplicant, knowing himself to be deeply in the wrong in the way that men have always felt themselves to be in the light of a woman's accusatory disapproval." End of quote. The best way to take the moral high road is to examine your group's characteristics and another group's differentiating characteristics. Identify yours as moral and call theirs immoral. Let's see. We have men's area of addiction, women as sex objects, and we have women's area of addiction, men as success objects. When a woman marries a doctor or a millionaire, we congratulate her. But in men's area of addiction, sex, well, there's no arena in which we've been more judgmental. First, we're taught that sex is dirty. Then we announce to our sons that they're the ones expected to initiate the dirt. As we're doing this, we teach our daughters, beware of boys, they're after only one thing. In contrast, we don't tell our sons, beware of girls, they just want a free dinner and drinks. Feeding the girls' addiction is not considered immoral. When we expect boys to take sexual initiatives and believe boys feel they can be violent toward women, we are set up to agree with Marilyn French, the author of The Woman's Room, when she says that all men are rapists, and that's all they are. End of quote. There is no man-bashing more vicious than expanding the definition of rape so that virtually every heterosexual man is considered a rapist. The mass media widely quoted a study sponsored by the Gloria Steinem-founded Ms. magazine. The study reported that 25% of all women were raped by the time they were in college. But the survey used this question to reach that 25% figure. Have you ever given in to sexual intercourse when you didn't want to, because you were overwhelmed by a man's continual arguments and pressure? Notice that these women did not define themselves as raped, just as verbally overwhelmed. Ms. and the media translated this into rape. As for the women, 42% said they had sex with these men one or more times after this. In essence, first we tell our sons that their job is to sell themselves. Then we label them rapists when they sell themselves too well. Then our solution is to change only men, rather than to ask women to also share the responsibility for taking sexual initiatives. When women have to sell themselves more, men will have to sell themselves less. When I conduct role reversal dates in my workshops, and I invite the women to initiate, they too begin to sell themselves, often oversell themselves. Why? The women are discovering that the shorter the period between eye contact and intercourse, the shorter the period of potential rejection. In the workshops, when a woman persuades a guy to go further than he would have preferred, either because the guy wasn't that attracted to her to begin with, or he had a steady girlfriend, I don't call the woman a rapist for overdoing the assignment. The solution then is to socialize both sexes to share the expectation of taking sexual risks. Then I think we'll do less accusing and more appreciating, and help men to be less sexually compulsive. When women are paying for dinners and drinks, and risking rejection, as they tell a guy how cute he is, guys won't mind extending that period longer. Man bashing today extends to the way we look at men versus women who have had sex outside of marriage. Often today, men who cheat find that cheating ruins their reputations, as with Prince Charles or President Clinton. In contrast, women who cheat are portrayed as unhappy, as in need of affection, attention, or love, as with Princess Diana. Few people ask if Bill Clinton or Prince Charles was also unhappy personally, or whether they had a need for more affection, attention, or passion, but that they felt trapped, whether in the White House or in Buckingham Palace, or in marriage. The double standard that's now fostered in romance novels is of a married woman having a success object for security and a sex object on the side, in essence, labeling infidelity romance. Take, for example, the Bridges of Madison County. I recall walking out of the film version of Bridges, and I was actually wiping my tears over the disappointed dreams of Meryl Streep's character, Francesca. But with the light of day, I started to wonder whether I'd crossed that bridge in only one direction. Here was a married woman having an affair, and I'm calling it romance. When a married man has an affair, don't I call it infidelity? Today, when a man has an affair, he's often condemned as a womanizer, a user, jerk, before millions of women, and cross-examined before the 9 justices of Women's Supreme Court: Oprah, Sally, Jenny, Jerry, Montel, Maury, Roseanne, Ricky, and Rosie, or their current replacements. The double standard deepens when we consider the ostracism of men's fantasies versus the availability of women's. Men's fantasies are hidden from view in plastic bags behind counters, and they're labeled pornography. In contrast, romance novels constitute 40% of all paperback book sales in America, and they're labeled romance. I call romance novels female pornography because I define pornography as that which objectifies. The romance novel often involves objectifying one man as a success object and another man as a sex object. Romance novels rarely make heroes of the sensitive man. The novels have titles like Sweet Savage Love, not He Stopped When I Said No. Their formula? She attracts and resists. He performs and persists. Now this confuses some men. When she says no but doesn't mean it, it's a romance novel if he persists. When she says no and means it, it's sexual harassment or date rape if he persists. Do romance novels help women who have affairs bring their newly discovered passions back into the marriage? Hardly. In Bridges, Francisca makes not a single attempt to bring into her marriage the part of herself that she discovered in her affair. Thus, the romance novel is reinforcing a division between marriage and romance. Romance novel readers are not just stay-at-home moms. 71% have jobs outside the home. When Harlequin romances discovered this, they modified their formula to appeal to these working women, and their net earnings in 10 years increased 20,000%. In the Harlequin romance formula, some man still provides a woman with a source of security, a working woman, thus giving her options to work or not work. What does she do for him? The fantasy is that her mere existence, her beauty, her soul are so superior to his that she does not need to do anything for him. She just needs to be. He's the human doing, she's the human being. The new sexual double standard: female infidelity as romance, male infidelity as infidelity, allows a woman who has an affair to more easily tell the truth, because when she does, it's seen as romance, which is excitement, or she gets empathy, because the man failed to communicate. In contrast, when a man has an affair, he feels more pressure to lie, because he is seen as a betraying womanizer. But when he does lie, he risks being impeached for perjury, either in the White House or in his wife's house? Okay, I've stated some of the problems regarding man-bashing. What about the solutions? Underpinning any solution is the replacement of the perpetrator-victim paradigm with 3 understandings. First, that men are not the enemy. Second, that the option of divorce comes with a price of everyone feeling rejected, not just women. And third, that men haven't changed because the pressures on men haven't changed. The pressure to work full-time by obligation, the pressure to risk sexual rejection, not by option but by expectation, the expectation on men to pay, to pick a woman up, to call her in the morning, versus her option to do those things for men haven't changed. What we've done is expand women's options, retained men's expectations, then complained men haven't changed. That must change. If we're to revamp the paradigm of our daughters treating themselves as victims and treating men as perpetrators, how do we begin? As parents, we have an obligation to not protect our daughters from rejection so much that when a divorce occurs, the daughter assumes it must be his fault because they haven't experienced that much rejection before, and thus she hasn't learned that love is a risk with a very high probability of rejection for everyone. We protect our daughters more in the long run by exposing them to risks of rejection at a time in their life when we can support them through it. We can protect our daughters by encouraging them to ask a boy out and to let the boy know that they will initiate when they're ready. At the same time, this prevents our sons from having to keep testing the waters and empowers our daughters to control their own lives. No matter where we start, we have the obligation to not leave our sons uncomfortable with themselves, the way the Depression left some of our dads uncomfortable with money. Okay, let's transfer from man-bashing to what I'll call the lace curtain, or what a man might say when he hears, "It's men in the news, it's men in the government, it's men at the top, where are the women?"